Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the May 20th meeting of the Local Planning Agency of Lee County, 2024. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Amanda, have you reviewed the affidavit?
Good morning. For the record, Amanda Swendel at the Lee County Attorney's Office. I have reviewed the affidavit of publication and it is legally sufficient.
Thank you. Let's rise and say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. This is a public forum. I see members of the public here. This is a time at which you can opine about things that are not on the agenda. If there are,
we're here for an agenda.
All right. If you wish to speak, have you filled out a card? If you would do that, and Shannon, if you could bring those to me, thank you. Next item of business is the approval of minutes from the April 22nd, 2024 meeting. Have all of you reviewed those minutes, and do I have a motion?
I make a motion to approve.
Ray, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Dustin, thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, thank you. The next item of business is the approval of development agreement. The Friends of Boca Grande Community Center, Inc. request approval of a development agreement pursuant to the Florida Local Government Development Agreement Act, Florida Statutes, sections 163.220-163.3243 and Lee County Administrative Code 5-10. The development agreement is for the construction of a new auditorium and other major improvements to the county-owned Boca Grande Community Center. The improvements will be funded and constructed by the Friends of Boca, subject to approval by Facilities and Construction Management, and upon completion will be maintained by the county. Ms. Swindle.
Good morning, LPA members. Again, for the record, Amanda Swendel at the Lee County Attorney's Office. I have a different kind of item for you today. This project is the first of its kind under the county's newly adopted Administrative Code 5-10, which was authorized under the Florida statutes just cited by our chair. Basically, these statutes, along with our adopted Administrative Code, provide a mechanism for the county to work with private entities for the development of public facilities. So in this case, the Friends of Boca Grande, which is currently a tenant out at the community center and does a lot of the management aspects of the community center already, has proposed a pretty interesting and pretty exciting project, some major improvements out at the community center, including the construction of a new auditorium, and I'll let them talk a little bit more about that. But basically, what we're here today is to get support from the LPA to take this item to a second and final public hearing in front of the Board of County Commissioners. That hearing is scheduled for June 18th, 2024 at 9:30 a.m. in the Commission Chambers located at 2120 Main Street, Fort Myers, Florida 33901. And if you have any questions for me, I'll be happy to answer them. But again, the Friends of Boca are here to talk a little bit more about the project.
Thank you. Does staff have a presentation or anything beyond Ms. Swindle? All right. Would the Friends of Boca like to?
I have a question.
Hmm?
I have a question. Go ahead.
One moment, please. Ray has a question.
Sorry, I ran too soon.
On the draft developer agreement on page 1, it states Exhibit A, public use area. And on page 2, Exhibit A is repeated. And it should be Exhibit B,
Okay.
as the exhibits are different.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much.
So I served my purpose.
Thank you. Appreciate that. It's always good to get additional eyes on something like this. All right. Anything else from the members?
Dustin, do you have anything?
No, I don't.
Thank you so much.
Seeing that staff has no further presentation, would Marta Howell like to go first?
Good morning. I'm Marta Howell, the Executive Director for Friends of Boca Grande. Thank you so much for having us here today, and it's kind of fun to be the first time project like this working with the county. About 2 years ago, we began talking with our community members about improvements that could be made to our community center. And we did a little survey, first talking to, there are probably over 34 nonprofit organizations that use our community center. So it is a very busy place on a little campus. And so we talked with all of those. I did, as well as some of my board members, talked with all of those groups to talk about what their needs were, what their dreams were, what would they do differently if they had an opportunity. And then we did a survey of the community. And normally when Friends would do a survey of our community, we'd get about 200 responses. But we asked those partner organizations to also send this survey out, and we got over 650 responses from our community saying, yes, they agreed that the community center was tired and needed to be having some upgrades, and yes, they were comfortable with Friends taking leadership. And that was very important to us because we needed some confirmation. We were just one of those 34 not-for-profit groups. But the community felt confident that we could take those steps forward and take this project forward. We brought on Jeff Mudgett, architect, to be a visionary part of our team because Jeff is the architect that did our Little Island School. And it blends in so beautifully with our current campus at the community center. We thought Jeff was the perfect person to help us vision what we might be able to do. And out of that, really developed some goals and values for what would guide this big project of ours. And those included honoring the character of Boca Grande, maintaining the maximum amount of green space was very important to us. We, of course, wanted to listen to our community members and constituents, particularly the 30-some not-for-profits that use the organization. We wanted to make sure that we serve the needs of all of the demographics on the island, not just our senior citizens, but our younger families and children. This is a community center, and it's for the entire community. We wanted to work with the Island School, as I mentioned, thoughtfully replace the auditorium to meet both ADA requirements, because our current auditorium, if you have a handicap, you cannot get up on the stage. You can't participate in that kind of matter, but also to meet FEMA requirements and improve all of the technology that we could and really create a new theater experience in what would be our multi-purpose new auditorium/theater now. We want to phase the construction over 3 years, which is really complicated and has made Jeff's life much more challenging, but we didn't want to disrupt any of these not-for-profits from being able to do their business during season, which is really November through April. So we are trying to phase this over 3 years so that we can continue to operate and then move into the revitalized spaces. And finally, we wanted to assure that the architecture is consistent and complementary to the existing building. So with those goals and values in place, Jeff and I and a whole team of community members have been creating a kind of a moving around and maximizing uses. Organizations are moving here and there. There's a small addition being added to the school. We're building this new theater auditorium, and we're moving around pieces and parts to really make the efficient use of space because the space is quite limited. So if you'd like, Jeff can kind of review the site plan with you.
Members of the board, do we need a site plan review?
You don't need one.
I can give it to you in 2 minutes or less, and if there are any questions.
You got 3 minutes.
Okay.
Go, Jeff.
All right. Uh-oh, the mouse disappeared. Is this a touch screen? Nope. Where did the mouse? Was there a mouse? Where's the staffer here? There was, because he loaded this thing up for me. Well,
That's okay. Take your time. While we're figuring that out, let me just my sentiments are, seems like a really great project. It seems like it's really something that would be community health building wise, and it sounds like you've done a really great job. How is the 13 million coming? Has there been an initial capital call?
So it's kind of amazing. And beginning in January, a small team from our board of directors, as well as a couple of members of the Royal Palm Players, got together, created a strategy and a hit list, if you will, of people that they were going to ask. During this time, we've also put a big article in our little Boca Beacon newspaper, and we've sent out now in April about 3,000 pieces of mail to our community. Right now, between actual cash, pledges, and promises, we're up to about $15.5 million. So the community is excited about it. Our goal was 15 million. So we recognize that doing a project over 3 years, those cost estimates are going to shift and change a little bit over time. But we're feeling really good about where we're at.
Good.
That this is going to happen. So.
Good. Jeff, the floor is yours.
Okay. For the record, my name is Jeff Mudgett. I'm the architect working with the Friends of Boca Grande here, and we're just so excited. A project like this doesn't come along very often. We've worked with many friends groups that have not had nearly the success in fundraising and community support for their projects. This is also near and dear to my heart because I designed the Island School many years ago. We were brought on when the first architect was found out to be not a registered architect, and your Lee County project manager had him fired on the spot and asked us if we wanted to come do a little project in a controversial spot that half the community didn't want. It's attached to a national registered building and it's way below flood. We said, sure, that sounds like fun. So here's that project in much larger scale now. So the existing historic resource and what's listed on the National Register is this community center, the Mediterranean style building that many of you are familiar with. But also equally important are the nationally registered Teachridge House, the nationally registered Crown and Shield House, and then the locally contributing Dishon Bowen House, which was brought to the site 20 years ago and attached to the Teachridge House. You can see we're touching every bit of this. Everything from this building gets a new doorway inside of it and a new larger door to a brand new 2,600 square foot auditorium. And it's 9,600 square foot, excuse me. It's really an exercise, like she said, of moving people around to a space that better fits their needs and also makes room for others. The historic preservation, the Historic Museum shares a space with Boca Bargains in this building. Boca Bargains is going to get the whole building, the historic board is going to get their own museum here. They're thrilled with that. So it's a matter of moving people to places they're more happy with, and that's how Marta's built support from so many people for this project. In general, though, the site is bordered by the historic railroad right-of-way out here, Park Avenue, Banyan, and First. This is the principal elevation. From the principal elevation, there are almost no changes. You're going to see the Island School, which has been there since '08, in addition to the Island School here. We very intentionally buried the big new addition, the tall addition, behind the main facade of the historical resource. And we could go on and on. We have a presentation to the Historic Board in July, hopefully, and get into all sorts of detail there. But the main thing is to build this, we're tearing down a non-historic building in the middle. So we're not taking up just extra space here. Trying to take planning points. Parking-wise, we worked through a number of early meetings with staff. Obviously, this old historic site, is not completely in compliance with current parking ordinances and everything else. And if we decided we wanted to reorganize the front parking and side parking to make it comply, the site just could not bear it. So staff has decided we're going to leave existing parking facilities alone. And since we're abandoning this auditorium for auditorium use and building a new one, there's only a 42-seat difference between the two auditoriums. All the rest of the occupancy stays the same around here. So we're building new parking for the 42 person Delta in the auditorium. It's great that for Boca Grande, you can do some of your parking requirements with golf cart parking. And so we're making up that difference in golf cart parking additions along the west side here. And there's negotiations right now to put a big golf cart parking facility in the GICIA's right of way over here, which will also support the project. I'll stop there and see if you need any more detail or not.
Mr. Mudgett, I think that's fine unless the LPA has other inquiries. No, thank you very much for the insightful presentation. There are being no other members of the public that I see. We're closing the public portion of this hearing. I'll bring it back to the LPA. Any comments, discussion? Anyone?
I think it's a great project. It reminds me kind of a maintenance of traffic, you know, that you kind of you have to keep that facility open, and I think that is what has probably got your funding to the level that it is making each group happy, and I think you have both done a great job.
Justin?
I would just echo what Jennifer just said. I think it's a fantastic community and Bob funded project. A lot of this stuff comes along and doesn't come to fruition, and you guys really have your act together, and it's amazing. I think it's going to be a great addition. We love to boat there and enjoy the island, so I'm looking forward to it. Yeah.
Okay.
You found tremendous support with the local communities, and you're doing a fabulous job. Really nice. Good.
And did I hear you say this is the first time that this development agreement type situation has been implemented?
Absolutely. We adopted an administrative code, I believe back in February, was that time frame? And so this is the very first project that's coming through on it.
Good. You please keep us up to date as to any hitches or glitches. I'd be curious to see how it gets executed.
Absolutely. So the next step after hopefully we get approval by the Board of County Commissioners is the Friends will work with facilities to get a construction management agreement, sort of very similar to what our design build contracts look like. So
Nice. All right. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion
Sir. Motion is
to accept I haven't done this before, so you're going to have to help me, Stan. To accept the Friends of Boca Grande Community Center request for approval of the development agreement pursuant to the Local Government Development Agreement Act, Florida Statute Sections 163-220-163.3243, and the Lee County Administrative Code 5-10.
thank you.
well done.
Second.
I'll second.
Further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda are the Land Development Code amendments. There are sundry. They are labeled as A through F and subsections 1 through 4. And I see we have County at the podium. Please begin.
Good morning, Dirk Danley with Lee County Zoning. We have a handful of LDC amendments to discuss with you today. Just by way of procedure, the way we've gone through the LDCAC and EROC is basically making a motion on every subpart, so A, B, C, D, E, and F, just so that we have clear direction on each of the sets of amendments. So far, we've been through one group of LDC amendments in this biennial cycle. This is group number 2. I believe it'll probably be 5 or 6 by the time we're done. Just trying to clean up a whole bunch of different pieces in the Land Development Code. There was a memo, hopefully you got it in your packet, kind of describing the intent of each of the changes for the amendments. And we as staff are going to go through those subparts with you, try to brief you on the high level what the approach was, and have discussion with you on those sections as they come. So with that, I'll start with restaurant classifications. This would be item 5A. Just to give you a high point on this, if anybody's been working in this county very long, they've had probably a challenge differentiating between the different type of restaurant groups, and quite frankly, maybe they don't line up with how most business is done today anyway. So what we propose is a consolidation of the restaurant groups into just restaurant, That way, we're not trying to split the difference between what a Panera is and what Chipotle or a Chili's. It's for the end user, you're all eating food at the end of it. The real differentiation is between a restaurant and a restaurant with a drive-through. A restaurant with a drive-through is intended to work like a fast food restaurant has up to this point. It triggers the extra requirements for extra setbacks and stacking and landscaping associated with the fast food restaurant use as it is today. And then everything else gets consolidated into that regular restaurant use. I do want to call attention to an additional definition that we proposed for pickup window. With the onset of the pandemic back in 2020, mobile ordering and other types of alternative means of purchasing restaurant food has kind of emerged. And we're trying to make sure that there's a differentiation between what a drive-through facility is and a pickup window, so that you're not triggering those fast food restaurants with somebody who just has a pickup window. To clarify, there's no ordering at a pickup window. It is specifically either through a mobile order or a call-in, and you're still in your car, but you're able to grab food and go. And with that, we'll take any comments from y'all. I don't know how you want to proceed, either going page by page or just comments in general.
Yeah, I don't feel like we have to go through every one, or we'd be here all day. But what I would like to do is take it kind of a section at a time. I know there's specific sections, and we'll stop at that section for now and see if LPA has any thoughts or questions on that.
I just have one question on page 17 of 19, where it deals with parking spaces for the restaurants. It seems as though we dealt with parking in an earlier LPA meeting, and just curious if what we discussed then is affected here. And I thought it was in regarding to floor space and back of house. And does that apply to any of these calculations or not?
I don't specifically remember what we discussed. It may have been about microbreweries. The last time we were here, we did have a discussion about the microbreweries, making sure that the industrial components of it calculated separate from the bar and cocktail lounge. That might be the same way. Currently, restaurants, as just a regular restaurant venue, is calculated gross floor area based on the ITE. I believe that there is some provision for some relief, but generally speaking, it's considered as a whole restaurant. So places where you're waiting, sitting, and food is being prepared is all calculated.
Anything else, Dustin?
I don't have any questions.
I have already given this comment at LDCAC. I don't see Anthony's here. But on the very last one, page 19 of 19, 34, 2021D, I would like to see that a little bit clearer. That is a total of 5 spaces, stacking for both of the menu boards, not 5 for each menu board. But we talked about that at LDCAC.
Yeah, we have notes on that. Just the way we've clustered these, the EROC, LDCAC, and LPA, we weren't able to make adjustments from the previous committees into this one, just the way they were all scheduled out. But we do have note of that. We'll make note of it again today. Thank you.
So this iteration is not encompassing the LDC comments, but it will.
Correct. The LDCAC was 2 Wednesdays ago, I believe. EROC was last week, and then here we are at LPA today.
And this reflects neither of those since of the...
Correct.
Okay.
They were already published by the time we were able to get to that point.
On page, I'm sorry, Dustin, did you have anything?
No.
Okay. On page 8 of 19, in the use reg table, in the first column, I found those definitions, first column, second and third cell down. I found those to be confusing. Drive-through for facility with any permitted use except restaurants with drive-through and restaurants drive-through.
Yeah, it looks like it got mixed up there. So it's drive-through facility for any permitted use, except for restaurants with drive-through. And then the third column would have been restaurant with a drive-through. Was it just that first or that second?
Probably more the syntax than the
Okay.
meaning, but the meaning isn't clear to me.
Okay.
If it's not clear to me, it would probably be unclear to others that haven't done this for a few days.
Understood.
So if you guys could
Clarify.
clarify and
Yeah,
maybe
okay.
reword that in a less confusing way.
Yeah, we can do that.
Page 14 of 19. Section 34-1264A 1, G is in golf. Therein is a reference with group 2, 3, or 4 restaurant.
Yes. Yep. And that was made note by the previous committees as well, but we'll make note of it again.
So that should be removed, I guess.
Yeah, it should just be restaurant.
Okay. And I have no more questions on items in group 1.
Okay.
If everyone else is good, we can move to group 2.
Can we make a motion on subpart A? Just so, or at least that's how we've done it in the past. If you want to continue on, that's fine too, but just how we've gone through the
Break
previous
these down
committees.
in A, B's, and C's, or do you want to?
That would be consistent with the way LDCAC and EROC has done it. So.
Okay, all right, we'll keep it clean. Thank you, Dirk. A motion on Land Development Code Amendments 5A. Anyone?
I move to recommend approval as noted.
As noted. Second?
I'll second.
In favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay,
Okay, so now we are on to 5B. This is EMS, fire, and sheriff stations. This is a somewhat simple amendment, but for those that work in development, this is an ongoing issue where the provision of EMS, fire, and sheriff stations and providing that level of services that's required has become more of a challenge just based on the limitations of what land's available. Staff has proposed an expansion of what zoning districts would allow EMS, fire, and sheriff stations based on the amendments provided to you today. As a rationale for this amendment today, the LEA plan has policy 2.1.3, which considers institutional uses in all land use categories. So in our opinion, the expansion of institutional uses into zoning districts would also be consistent with that. We did make a note of the residential nature of the RS districts and the TFC districts, and that there should be additional input to provide analysis on compatibility. So that is still considered through a special exception as we're proposing it today. And with that, we're here with any questions you may have.
questions for staff? I have no further questions. Do we have a motion for 5B on the agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve as proposed.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Ray? Any further discussion? In favor? Aye.
Aye.
Group 2, Item 3, aka 5C on the agenda.
I want to hand it off to Adam Mendez with our section to continue on.
All right. Thank you, Dirk.
Thank you. Adam Mendez, for the record. Good morning, committee members. Item 5C, accessory apartments and dwelling units, proposed modifications to those dwelling unit types in our land development code. There are 3 sections in your packet that have proposed modifications. Our definition for accessory apartment is modified to adopt a staff practice when reviewing floor plans of accessory apartments, which must be attached. However, attached can mean many things, including attached by a pergola or a breezeway, and so that's been cleaned up with the way that we have been enforcing the accessory apartment regulations, which are not subject to density restrictions. The second section pertains to the the density discussion in section 34-1177, where there is an attempt to clarify that accessory dwelling units are presumed to be affordable housing units, but without having to go through the process of rent controlling them. They're affordable houses by virtue of the relationship to a principal single-family residence. Their infill attributes for aging in place or affordable housing for students have been in practice for the county for a number of years. And so as you'll see through the strike through and underline language, it was always the intent to allow those dwelling units to be calculated using the maximum bonus density range of the future land use category instead of requiring a full dwelling unit. So we did receive comments at the EROC committee meeting from Ms. Sapin, and we're discussing some language with the planning section to make sure that the language is clear, that it's not maybe it's not presumed to be, but it certainly is not, but can be calculated at the affordable or at the bonus density range. There's a number of different ways to achieve bonus density besides affordable housing, so we're working through that to be tactful with how we frame that up. And if Ms. Sapin, if you had any suggestions since EROC on how maybe you would suggest, we would certainly take that under advisement. The last is the development standards, where you'll see the floor area has been increased proportionate to the single-family residences floor area, and there's just additional clarification in terms of which floor areas we're comparing when we're looking at ensuring that preservation of the single-family district is still intact, but the ability to calculate living area versus living area instead of living area versus floor area, which are defined differently in terms of how they're in the zoning chapter. The last section that's touched on is a section that pertains to an additional principal single-family residence on an undivided agricultural lot. The development standards pertaining to those, as they're currently written, would preclude the addition of an accessory apartment. As we remember, these are attached units that don't count as dwelling units, they don't have cooking facilities, subordinate to those single-family residences. The current language would prohibit those. So we went ahead and modified the language to clarify that an accessory apartment may be built in conjunction with each of those principal single-family residences on the undivided lot. The only difference in the outcome is the current regulations would require you to physically split that lot, draw that line, and then at that point you could build your accessory apartment or accessory dwelling unit if you had the density. So we don't see any protection in requiring someone to split the lot just to build the accessory apartment on each of these principal single-family units. So that's the summary on the amendments, the three sections we touched on. So with that, I'd like to open up the floor to any questions.
Questions? Anyone? You good? Good. I do have a question on cooking facilities. Is there a lexicon, a standard? Is there a definition of, does that include a fridge and a stove? I know on the beach you couldn't have a fridge and stove. Could you expand that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So our definition in the Land Development Code for dwelling unit includes terminology as at least one kitchen. And in staff practice, there is no definition for kitchen that I am aware of. I'm looking back to see if I get a nod. No definition for kitchen that we're all aware of. Essentially, what we're looking at on a floor plan review is 220 for a full cooktop range stove. We have in practice allowed wet bars, so like a mini fridge or a sink, a single sink, but at a floor plan review, we're really looking to see if there are additional 220s on the floor plan, or there is a cooktop and oven, some of those facilities that draw higher amperage. That's as far as I know. I don't think there is any definitions elsewhere that could give you further clarification on that.
I would find that a bit perilous, especially in today's electric cars. 220 outlets may be used for many things other than stoves. Mm-hmm. And again, going back to the beach, we couldn't have a stove or like a refrigerator over like so many cubic feet. And that was often skirted. And I see the definition, I see cooking facilities in here. I would think it would be prudent to have a definition in addition to or other than additional 220 outlets, in part because of the many other uses that those could be used for. So I would ask that cooking facilities be put into that thought process.
We'll take that under advisement. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And the term, I think it's live local. Do these modifications to accessory apartments, do they fall in flow with the live local? The Senate, they passed it a year ago and it's been modified this year. Do they act in concordance with those things, or are they opposed to those things?
I don't believe there's any relationship with that act, but I don't think that they're contravening the act itself.
Does that act not make provisions for accessory uses on primary residences or allow other density?
My understanding, the Live Local Act pertains to the ability to build density at higher ranges than what the comprehensive plan would allow under the actual underlying future land use category, and at heights greater with parking less than in the event that they opt into a agreement to provide affordable housing. I wasn't aware of any subsections in that act that pertain to additions to single family parcels. It's just kind of the sphere we're in right now is kind of infill on single family lots. So if anyone has any further input on that, I don't see any. I don't think it contravenes the Live Local Act.
And I'm not familiar with it at that granular level, just the thought that came. Okay. Any other questions for Adam? Do I have a motion on this item?
I make a motion to recommend approval of Section 5C, Group 2, Item 3, accessory apartments and accessory dwelling units.
Second?
I'll second.
Any other discussion? In favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Adam.
Thank you. All right, so we'll move on to item 5D, dwelling unit types on non-conforming lots of record. I'll start at the end of the packet, just as the flow has been explained to in the previous committees. And so I'll speak a little on, there's two parts really in the discussion here. We've got a staff practice to allow conventional single-family residences to be built on non-conforming mobile home or recreational vehicle lots of record. Staff practice has been typically these lots of record that are in mobile home parks have a zoning designation. Most of those zoning designations, if you look at the use matrices, they allow, for instance, MH2 allows not only a manufactured home, but it allows a conventionally built single-family residence by right. So the underlying zoning district allows a conventional build in lieu of pulling on a manufactured home. So on these lots of record, staff has permitted the option to do in lieu of a manufactured home to conventionally build within the same envelope that a manufactured home and its accessories would be on that lot. So the modifications to Section 34, 32, 74 intend to clarify that a single-family conventional residence may be built on a mobile home lot of record. And that's really the sum of that section's modifications. The other major revision to the non-conforming lots of record are pertaining to 343272. Make sure I have that section correct. Where the Land Development Code currently limits the ability to a single-family residence. So a non-conforming lot of record, despite its density that it may have, despite its zoning district underlying permitted uses, they are limited to the construction of a single-family residence. The modifications before you would allow a non-conforming lot of record that has a zoning district, such as a 1- and 2-family zoning district that might permit a duplex or a 2-family attached product, to allow them to build those types of dwelling units provided they're consistent with the LEED plan, so in terms of density and water sewer requirements. An example that's been used is, I believe Pine Manor has a subdivision in the intensive development future land use category. They're 50-foot wide. In the intensive development future land use category, the lot area for each of these platted lots would avail themselves to more than to a duplex. They're zoned for duplexes, but because of their 50-foot lot width, which isn't 75, which make it a conforming lot, they're only able to build a single-family residence. And we've had lots of feedback on that throughout the years, because there are historically duplexes that were built prior to the adoption of the current regulations. So this is really to allow these non-conforming lots of record to be developed with uses that are in the underlying zoning district, provided they're consistent with the LEED plan in terms of density and water and sewer, namely. And that would conclude my presentation on item 5D. If anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Questions, anyone? Amanda, in an abundance of caution, I am personally under contract to buy a mobile home park that has, could have the possibility of this having application. I haven't bought it, but I have had discussions with Brandon briefly, and Anthony has been very helpful as well. I know we need all four to get, because we only have a quorum. I wish to be completely transparent. How do you advise?
Thank you for putting that on the record. Based on that synopsis, having not actually purchased the property and having no immediate intent to utilize whatever change in the regulations is being proposed today, whatever benefit might arise from such a change, I think, in my legal opinion, would be remote and speculative and would not constitute a legal voting conflict.
Okay. And this may add more clarity, Adam. I believe the property that I'm considering, and it's one of many in the real estate world, Zone C1, does that allow a single-family home?
It does.
All right. Well, in the interest of moving these through, and the fact that it is on the public record, and that I will recuse myself if necessary from future issues that may pertain to this, I am prepared to entertain a motion.
I make a motion to recommend approval of Section 5D, Group 2, Item 4, the dwelling unit types and non-conforming lots of record.
Second?
I'll second.
We have a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Amanda.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Adam.
Thank you. If I may focus your attention to item 5E. These amendments pertain to our subordinate and temporary use regulations in the Land Development Code. In essence, they adopt, again, a staff practice of allowing a recreational vehicle on a lot in the event that a home is devastated or needs rehabilitation after a disaster. It's been a staff practice to allow these temporary use permits that come in to include an RV instead of a manufactured home. And that's what these modifications for you attempt to explain. There's also additional discussion that you won't see here in this packet that pertain to the time frame that's allowable for a RV or mobile or manufactured home in the event that you're rehabilitating your business. So we're looking to extend that to 24 months. I think right here you still see that 9-month, 270 days. That's subsection B2, the maximum duration for a temporary use following rehabilitation of a damaged business, commercial or industrial use. So we're looking to bring that to 24 months instead of 9 months after experiencing Ian and seeing that there's certainly a need for additional time as people work out things with their insurance, and things just tend to take longer after something catastrophic like that. So With that, I think that summarizes the changes in this section, so if anyone had any questions.
Anyone?
I'm not an English major, so you forced me to Google what M-placed means in section C, page 2 of 2, C1. And it says M-placed means the same thing as placed. Just curious why
It's terminology that's used a lot in the land development code, maybe a little extra or archaic, but we'll note that and see if maybe we should just simplify it and say placed.
Thank you. I'm simple.
Thank you, Rick. Dustin?
No.
The only comment I would make is that your change to the 2-year time frame rather than the 9 months is really good, and that does follow along with what some of the barrier islands have been doing, the 2-year time frame.
Okay. Thank you.
I would have the following thought. The 2 years, and September 28th will be 2 years, and I'm on the island all the time, and I support that as well. But I also am observant of the fact that we're leaving for a business at 270 days. And I can think of, Mojo's, Mom's. These are places, their buildings are not even close. And as an islander, I would like to see that businesses also have the runway of up to 2 years. And those businesses, I think, are instrumental in getting the RV use off of residential properties even quicker, because I don't have to go off the island to get food, I don't have to go off the island to get nuts and bolts. And so I would ask that staff consider elongating the temporary use instead of 270 days to commensurate 2 years. There's a lot of esprit de corps that happens in these makeshift trailers that you really need in those times. The next and final comment I have on this Group 2, Item 5, is there's so many of them. It's the last item on page 2 of 2 that says placement or setting of the mobile home or recreational vehicle must comply with Chapter 6, Article 4 pertaining to floodplain management. And in my head, that means that it has to be 11 feet in the air and all these other things, and that's in conflict with the very purpose of having them. And to take an RV as, and I'm sure there's a definition of recreational vehicle other than mine, but to make it floodplain compliant is to nullify its functionality. You can't make it floodplain compliant in a timely fashion. And around me are 5,000 mobile homes that are being replaced by RVs, and they're not at base flood elevations. So how do we handle that?
I want to confirm that the intent is to not require that. I don't know Chapter 6's nuances in and out, whether or not this is built into Chapter 6. Disaster housing does not need to be elevated. If it's temporary, maybe perhaps there's language in Chapter 6, but we'll make certain of that, ensure that the intent of these temporary housing units do not require a FEMA elevation. I don't see any additional feedback from the back, so we take that comment and we'll certainly confirm that. Thank you.
We'll definitely confirm. I don't recall what's in that section, but it may just speak to road readiness and registration or strap down. Sometimes we have requirements in our code for that, but we'll double check and make sure that we're not, creating a conflicting process where we're having temporary placement that's 11 feet in the air.
That's really important. And at the last LPA meeting, we actually addressed a change about RVs, and they had to, within 24 hours of a named storm, they had to be. So all those have to meld, because if, 2005, we had Gene and Ivan and Jane and bam, bam, bam. And if you just had your house wiped out and you just put an RV there and you got it strapped down, and, 3 weeks later, the next named storm comes, and that stuff we did last month means you got to unstrap it and move it. And so just, I don't know how all that works together, but I do know that those lines are really important when you've lost everything. So I'm in favor of this, and I think this is great stuff, subject to those notes. Any other comments? Motion, anyone?
I'll make a motion to approve with the discussed changes.
Second?
I'll second.
Dustin? Favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll move on to our last item. This is a cleanup item. You'll see it's broken out into several sections. The first is going to introduce a definition of affordable housing. I believe that is going in Chapter 2. Currently, the Land Development Code does not have a definition for affordable housing. So this definition, in concurrence with the County Attorney's Office, I believe, was derived from HUD. And so that's where we've sourced our definition for affordable housing. The second item is the adoption of modification of the home occupancy regulations in the Land Development Code. There was a House bill that was passed in 2021. It was House Bill 403, 2021 legislature, and it included some preemptions that local governments, how they regulate home occupancies. And so after implementing our regulations side by side with the new House bill, we've identified some areas where there is some potential overlap of conflict, and so you'll see some modifications there that are intended to be consistent with that House bill. The third sub-item are a abundance of Lee Plan cross-references that are updated throughout the Land Development Code. And the fourth pertains to Airport Compatibility Zone, Wellfield Protection Zone map updates. I don't have the background on that. Dirk, if you want to just to briefly touch on that item for me, please.
Right, yeah, so the airport compatibility zone maps, the LCTA is working on the area plan, master plan for RSW, and they provided some additional maps for us to update. This is kind of an iterative cycle. They'll be doing this again once they have some more. They have an adopted plan, but they're kind of slow rolling them out because they're needing to actually first. And then the wellfield protection zone is just an update as well, based on our water supply plan update. Whatever the case is, it's updated to reflect what's required in the plan. And we're here any other questions you may have.
Adam, anything further? Adam, anything further?
That's nothing further. Thank you.
Any questions for Adam?
Just got one question that in section 2-143 definitions, where it states then a certain percent of gross income for housing costs. Is there a definition of costs?
I would
What does that
defer.
entail?
I would defer to our staff member back here. I believe Brandon Dunn. Do you have a response for that?
I was having a little trouble hearing Ray with that question. Can you restate
In
it?
section 2-143 definitions in A, affordable housing specifically means housing on which the occupant is paying no more than a certain percent of gross income for housing costs. What is housing costs? Is there a need to define that?
The reason it's not defined is because depending on what program we're looking at, SHIP does sometimes include utilities as part of the cost. Sometimes it's not, so we didn't include that, but that's typically what we're talking about with those costs would be the cost of the rent plus any utilities or other costs associated with that.
Everything giving the ability to live there.
There are different requirements based on the program, so I think that we would have a little bit of difficulty defining what those exact costs are.
Okay. In Division 3, it's numbered 1 through 7. You've got 8 crossed off and thrown a 7 back in, but should that not be 8?
Yes, I believe that was picked up on previous committee review. We will address that before we get to the board. Thank you.
Thanks, Ray. Dustin, anything?
No.
Thank you, Adam.
Thank you.
Do we have a motion for agenda item 5F, items 1 through 4?
Make a recommendation to approve section 5F, group 2, item 6, cleanup.
Second?
I'll second.
Dustin, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Before we scatter under other business, and Janet, I haven't given you sufficient forewarning, but as we are now at 98% humidity and heat, people are planning travel. Do you have any forecast as to, I think we usually take a month off, or Brandon, any thoughts, either of you?
I don't think we regularly take a planned month off in the summer. I feel like the past few years it's worked out that way where we haven't had a lot of business to discuss over the summer. If you'd give us a couple days to kind of look at the cases we're working on currently, we can, and let me talk to Anthony in the zoning section to see what LDC amendments he might having coming up. We can probably get back with you in the next few days to give you some anticipated schedules.
Okay, that would be helpful. Try to be available for these things, but we only got 4 today out of 7, so it's happening.
Yep.
All right, any other business from the LPA?
I just got a technical question. Janet, when you email us as a group, are we allowed to respond to all or solely to you?
I mean, I just usually poll them, or, I might email them.
So, I don't think Janet's emails are never going to poll you about how you're going to vote on a case. So please don't respond with an answer like that. But if it's just, are you available to attend? There's no problem with that being copied to all. But if you ever think it's a close call, you can always just send it straight to Janet and she'll share it as needed.
Okay, sounds good. All right, move to adjourn.
I move.
Thank you. We are adjourned.